Why, hello there, I'm Professor Joel, and welcome to another exciting episode of Planet Scooby Reviews. And today we are covering Scooby and Kwackyland, which is the 10th episode of the 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo. And this episode originally aired on November 9th, 1985. Here we see the gang imprisoned in the funny pages of the National Gazette. So the funny pages are like the parts of the newspaper that have like the comic strips, like you'd have Marmaduke and Family Circus and all sorts of things like that. And it was popular when Scooby-Doo was airing, or this episode was airing in the 80s. I'm sure they still have it now. I haven't had a newspaper delivered to my house in decades, so I'm sure it's still out there. I don't know what's hip nowadays in the comic strip industry, but back in the 80s, I was a big fan of the funny pages. And anyway, they get entrapped by this demon named Demondo. Anyway, enough of my jibber jabber. Let's get on with the review. The episode begins with a dramatic shot of the National Gazette building. Inside, Weird and Bogle are tampering with the printing presses. The comics they are printing are able to come to life with the powers of Demondo. And Demondo is our demon of the week, and he has a special spectral ink, and any monsters printed with it are under his control. Using this cosmic spectral ink, which is in a pen, Demondo is able to transport the Scooby Gang into the funny pages by having them read the newspaper. His cosmic pen will let him control everything that goes on.
No, demon of the comics, return to the page. Your time will come. Let me explain. This liquid is made of spectral elixir. The newspaper monsters printed with this ink are in my power. These monsters will rise up and live. But the first thing I have to do is get rid of Scooby and his little band of ghost hunters. I'm going to fill this pen with cosmic ink. Then I'll use it to imprison Scooby and the others on this comic page. This pen is the key back into the real world, and it fits a door I have hidden inside this page. Deliver this special edition to Scooby and his friends, and I'll do the rest.
Meanwhile, back at the Scooby residence, Vincent is staying with the gang as he is having his castle recobwebbed. And the gang are tired of waiting on him hand and foot. Scooby fetches the newspaper for Vincent, and Scooby just takes the funny pages and goes to read them. Scooby's favorite comic is Platypus Duck, and as he reads it, he is sucked into the panels along with Shaggy, Daphne, Flimflam, and Scrappy. The gang fall into the Platypus comic while Demondo accidentally falls into the Astrid 2000 comic panels, and there's this magic pen that controls everything that falls into some sort of prehistoric comic called The Missing Link.
I am Demondo. Your ghost chasing days are over.
Where are we? You're in the funny papers, honey.
That no-good Demondo must have done this to us.
Hiya, Scooby.
Quack, quack.
I'm Platypus Duck.
My hero.
Platypus Duck leads the gang to a special hole so they can jump into another comic book panel where there's this wizard who knows where the pen is, or he knows where the secret exit to the entire comic book system. And the first comic they end up in is in Astrid 2000 instead of the wizard comic panel, and Astrid vows to help them. Unfortunately, Demondo is in that comic too, and he threatens the gang so he can get his pen back. The gang then travel to see the Wacky Wizard, which is the name of the comic, and the wizard teleports the gang to the Missing Link comic where the pen is. The pen is broken, but Scooby soon discovers it's not actually a pen, it's a key, so all they have to do is find the door. Demondo steals the pen and the comic characters pull together to help the gang out. Scooby gets the key back and everyone is able to escape. Landing back in reality, they toss the crumpled comic into the chest, ending Demondo's reign of terror. Even stranger, Platypus Duck, Astrid, and the Wacky Wizard are now in Scooby's world, and they are there to stay.
Howdy, folks.
Platypus, it's you.
That's right, Scooby. We saved the day. And since you're asking, we came to stay.
Quack, quack, quack.
I'm Scooby-Doo.
I give this episode a 7.5 out of 10. It's a good episode. I enjoyed this episode a lot, and within the 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo, this one might be one of my favorites, even though there's nothing spooky about this at all. There's no mystery, and that's part of the reason why I give it a 7.5 out of 10. For me, Scooby-Doo always has to have a bit of mystery and some spookiness to it, and this has nothing. It's completely devoid of it. It's pure comedy and pure fantasy, I guess. Nothing that scary, even though we have a demon in it. He's not even that scary looking, but it's a good episode. So when I do my rankings, I kind of rank within the series as well as the entire franchise. So like this is one of my favorite episodes so far, and I don't know if it's just because I've warmed up to the humor of the 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo, but if I were to show a Scooby fan, or not even a Scooby fan, someone new to Scooby-Doo an episode, this would not be it. This would be much later down the road. I would probably show them more and tell them to watch all of Scooby-Doo Where Are You and the Scooby-Doo show before even tackling this kind of episode. So that's why it gets a 7.5 out of 10. Plus that opening gag with Vincent, I know it's played for gags where he's kind of like in bed and the gang are waiting on him hand and foot, and it's part of the plot. But I just don't feel Vincent's the type of guy who would treat his friends like that, So that didn't exactly work for me. And then you had Weird and Bogle quite a bit in this one, and I'm not a big fan of those two ghosts. Like, I don't dislike them, but I'd rather get more scenes with Scooby and Shaggy and Daphne if I'm being, giving a fair rating in what I want in a Scooby-Doo episode. But yeah, this one also has a bit of nostalgia for me because I grew up in the 80s and the funny pages were a big deal, especially on Saturdays. Like during the week, you just get like the black and white funny pages and it'd be like half a newspaper page. And then in the 80s, you get like a little booklet that would be like 12 pages of like full on color cartoons. And it was awesome. And I remember as kids, we kind of like save that up and use it as wrapping paper for birthday presents for your friends and stuff. And it was just a fun time to have that. I don't know if that still exists. I haven't gotten a newspaper in like 2 decades. I don't know what comic books are hip nowadays. When I was a kid, it was like Marmaduke was big and Family Circus was big, and you had something called For Better and Worse or For Worse. And what else did we have? We had something about a Viking. And we had Hagar the Horrible. Maybe that is the Viking. And we had the BC one where the guy, he had like a stone wheel. And there's a lot of good cartoons. Broomhelga or something. Broomhilda. That was one. Andy Capp, which was like this drunken dude. He's always drunk, I think. And that probably wasn't appropriate for kids, but I read it. Anyway, that is enough for me for this week because I've blabbered on a little bit too much. Again, 7.5 out of 10. And my main takeaway from this episode is I now have that Platypus Duck theme song stuck in my head. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. So anyway, join me next week when I will be covering Coast to Ghost. And until then, stay spooky.
Where are we? You're in the funny papers, honey.
That no-good Demondo must have done this to us.
Hiya, Scooby.
Quack, quack.
I'm Platypus Duck.
My hero!